we're hearing reporting that a lot of people are consumers in this case, not just auto companies, are front running the implementation of these tariffs. Do we all need to go out and buy a car this weekend?
If you're looking to buy a car in the next, I say, month, it wouldn't be a bad idea to get a car as soon as possible. I mean, we don't know exactly if these tariffs will be pushed back or they'll even go through. But if you're at the brink where you've priced things out, you can't afford much more in your monthly budget, it probably is a good idea to go out and get a vehicle, because inventory right now is still good. Incentives are still out there. So sometimes it's the case of better be safe than sorry.
Well, so when we consider what we're actually bracing for here in terms of potential price changes, Jessica, what will the impact be if even we're talking about U.S.-made cars, or at least finally manufactured cars in the United States that won't be subject to this 25% levy, but we're still talking about higher input costs like steel and aluminum? Do we have to expect prices to go up no matter what, even if we're not talking just imports?
Yes, I mean, that's right, because also along with steel and aluminum, we also have parts costs. So if you think about an engine or transmission coming from Canada or Mexico or wherever it may, that's significant cost, a significant part of the cost of the vehicle. So when that gets tariffed, that's definitely noticeable. It's not something that the auto companies can absorb. So it really just isn't about final assembly where the vehicles are made. It is how much of their parts are also coming from other countries. Some of that is not quite clear, but it seems like the Secretary of Commerce is going to straighten that out quite shortly. And we know that there's no vehicle on the road that is 100% built and sourced. Every part comes from the United States. The auto industry is a global business.
Well, when we consider where the impact is really going to land here, analysts suggest that companies like Toyota, Subaru, Honda, which have the lowest stockpiles of cars already in the U.S., could see the most immediate impact in terms of price increases and therefore starting to hit affordable compact cars first. Is that going to be the potential here for people who don't have a lot of money to buy an expensive car would in fact be impacted the most?
It depends really how the companies choose to absorb this cost. We don't think that they're going to just hike prices 25% on everything. Some of it is going to come out of their bottom line. I imagine also incentives will probably be the first to disappear before price increases happen. So those, 2.9% finance offers, $2,000 cash back, those will probably go first. And then eventually prices will go up. And I imagine it's hard to figure out exactly where, because it's not as if every tariff cost is going to apply for that vehicle. Because as you alluded to, someone that is paying $25,000 for a car is probably pretty price sensitive. And even if that car is heavily tariffed, comes from Mexico or whatnot, they're not going to be able to absorb those additional costs, unlike someone who's buying a $100,000 car. So auto companies are going to have to look across their lineups and figure out kind of where are the places where costs can be absorbed without doing really the least amount of damage to their sales.
And what's going to happen in the used car market, Jessica? Because obviously new is one thing, but we saw what happened during COVID with the used market.
Right. During the semiconductor shortage, a lot of people just went right to the used market. And what happened? Prices went up. So I would imagine that people think, OK, I'm going to circumvent this tariff. Let me go buy used. And then the demand on the used car side will go quite high, and that's going to raise prices. And we know that used inventory this year is already under pressure because we didn't see a lot of leases back in 2022. So those lease returns, which usually kind of pump up that near new used volume, that's not going to happen this year. And then also, these companies are having to worry, too, about repairs because parts we know will be tariffed. So someone buying a used car, you have to have it repaired more. Dealer reconditioning costs, which also requires parts. All of those kind of things in the vehicle ownership chain are going to require additional cost.
You're going to see a lot of people leasing vehicles, buying the car they're leasing, I'm guessing. Is that something you're expecting to see?
I would definitely advise people to look and see how much what's called like the lease buyout cost is. So you're at the end of your lease, how much does it cost to buy it outright? The thing is, 3 years ago, prices were high because we were in the semiconductor shortage. So people didn't necessarily get a great smoking deal on their lease back then. But that said, it could be better than what we're seeing today because we do know prices just are keep going up. So if you're in that situation, definitely look and kind of weigh out how much does it cost to buy a lease versus buying a new car today, because you're probably going to pay higher prices. And also, we know interest rates are quite high. The average interest rate for a new vehicle right now is over 7%. So got to factor that into the equation. Hardly anyone buys cash vehicles anymore.
Well, that's exactly what I wanted to ask about, Jessica, the kind of sensitivity to the sticker price of a vehicle versus the rate you have to pay if you need to borrow money to make that purchase. If we were to see rates go down because tariffs have a wider hit on the economy, would that actually be something that can help offset the effects we're talking about here?
It would certainly help. Obviously, if interest rates were to go down, I mean, right now, the average is 7.2% on new vehicles. So that puts us into an average monthly payment around $740. It's considerable. So if interest rates, I think, were to go down, that would help. But the issue is that most Americans are used to low interest rates because we had them for so long following the recession. So anyone that hasn't been in the market for, 5-6 years, which is pretty average, they're going to think, oh, that interest rate looks quite normal, or maybe even high. Even if it was to go down a few points, it would probably think that would really make a difference compared to what they've been paying already or what they're used to.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned that it's essentially impossible to find a car that's entirely made in America. But I keep seeing charts that put Tesla and Rivian at the top with 100% made in the USA. Is that not the case?
What they're saying is that their final assembly, so their vehicle plants, are made here. But if you broke down those cars and all the different types of components that they have in them, you're going to find definitely some foreign parts in there. Like I said, for the parts, it seems like it's a bit still, the administration is still like working through some of the details and those rules. So that's probably why there's some confusion. But I think everyone's kind of taking that final assembly list and kind of using that sort of as a guideline. But it's so much more than that, just because, like I said, engines, transmissions, those are very costly items in vehicles. And if those are made in a foreign location and the vehicle still assembled in the United States, that's still a pretty, sizable tariff that you're going to see on that vehicle.